Singapore's labour movement is finding new ways to help workers with retirement adequacy and career progression. It's laying the groundwork by reaching out to over 20,000 local workers in a year-long series of engagement sessions that launched today. Their findings will lead to recommendations to be passed on to policymakers. Clara Lee tells us more.
From engineering to digital marketing and now finance, Timothy Tay knows just how difficult it is to switch jobs. In fact, he brought up these challenges in an outreach session organised by the National Trades Union Congress.
From the employer's point of view as well, if they could be more accepting of mid-career hires, particularly the courses, the certifications that we take in order to bridge from one industry to another, that would be really helpful.
Now, NTUC wants to hear views from more workers through a series of surveys and meetings that run till year end. A report that contains findings and suggestions for the government will be released by the middle of next year. To kick things off, NTUC has hosted a dialogue session with more than 150 union leaders. They include representatives from different industries such as healthcare and manufacturing. Some of them have already volunteered to host the first talks with members of the public. Discussion topics on the table include retirement adequacy and the risk of unemployment.
There are many topics that are really being discussed at this point in time. One of those are probably like GST increases and of course increasing cost of living. I think these are all valid concerns, and we are really trying to deep dive into each and every one of them.
The Labour chief says these are all part of an effort to renew what he calls the Workers' Compact.
This is a time for us really to reconstitute and see what may be the desires, the aspirations of very different generations of Singaporeans that are coming onto the workforce, and also continue to answer to the needs of our senior workers that have done their best for the country and for themselves.
In a public letter, he's also urged workers and policymakers to join in the discussions.
We are confident that we have a good base of the rank and file workers, but we want to hear the youth, the PMEs, the sisters in the economy.
He says NTUC plans to build on networks from existing task forces and reach out to more people.
For more analysis on this, we're joined by Associate Professor Randolph Tan. He's Director of the Centre for Applied Research at the Singapore University of Social Sciences. Professor Tan, we just heard that reaching out to more than 20,000 local workers in a year-long series of engagement sessions that started today. Why now?
Well, I think one of the main reasons, of course, is that the economy has just come out of the pandemic, and there's been quite a strong recovery. But the labour market has actually reacted to that recovery, as it usually does, with a bit of lag. At the same time, I think there are signs or hints, at least, that the economy could be facing some potential challenges going ahead. So it's kind of like the economy, the labour market is actually sandwiched in between the pandemic that it has just come out of and a potential new phase, a fresh downturn. And so the window of opportunity for actually this engagement is actually quite a narrow one.
All right, so within this window where we will hear what workers want, what are you expecting to hear?
I think obviously, there's a lot of concern about the degree of about the uncertainty that they face with regard to the labour market situation. I think, as we saw earlier in the clip that you showed, workers are actually quite preoccupied with the message that they should embark upon skills development. But I think the question for most workers, at least in the work that we have done here at the centre, has shown that there's a lot of uncertainty about where they should devote their resources to. So workers themselves have limited resources in terms of time, and as well as the amount of finance they might have for skills upgrading. There's a lot of uncertainty about exactly what type of upgrading and skills development would be most suited for their situation. So I think that at least is one major concern that should be on their minds.
Well, that is a major concern. Would it be possible to come up with any general policy that would address this kind of concern, which I take would be very individual? What one person can do, my capabilities, my resources would be different from the next person. In terms of designing policies to address these challenges, do you really see anything being done?
Well, I agree absolutely with you that that given the stage of development that the Singapore economy is in right now, it's extremely sophisticated and it's come quite a long way. So it's certainly not one of those situations where you can have a one-size-fits-all kind of solution. But we have actually seen some important initiatives that have been launched in the last decade or so, at least in the aftermath of the global financial crisis, that were important in setting the stage for the labor market developments that we've seen since. So one of the most important, for instance, was the industry transformation maps, which are still in progress and continue to be upgraded. And these kinds of initiatives are actually very important for setting the foundation for the type of information that you would need to customize training for various groups of workers. Singapore's economy is very unique in a global sense. We have one of the largest proportions of high-skilled workers in the world. In fact, if you actually do a comparison, we're probably only second to Luxembourg in terms of the portion of the highest skilled category of workers. So that means that the challenges that we face in skills upgrading is actually quite different compared to if you had to direct those kinds of initiatives where you had workers who were more composed of the middle skill or the low skilled ones. So the information needs for this kind of approach to policy making is quite substantial. And so the groundwork that's been set in place with the industry transformation maps of the last 10 years or so will come in as very important for the next phase of development of newer and more targeted policies.
Professor, pardon me for cutting in here, but of course these things we aim for, and we talk about tripartism in Singapore. So we've got the Ministry of Manpower, NTUC, and the Singapore National Employers Federations, each representing government, representing workers, representing employers. Now, what a worker wants may not be good for the employer and may not be good for the government. If you could just highlight one concrete example of how you can come up with something that pleases all three and leads to the better outcomes that you have outlined.
It's true that it's very difficult, but I think one important way that you can actually think of bringing everyone together to a type of consensus is to think about the time frame within which you're operating. The labor market reacts to the broader economy with a lag. And if you talk about policy initiatives, the outcomes of policy initiatives often also manifest themselves within an even longer time frame. I think it's important for all the tripartite partners to come together and an agreement about how much time they wish to devote to any particular new policy initiative. Workers especially, if their support is needed over the longer term, I think it would be important in order for them to sustain that support, to let them know exactly what the time frame is for their involvement and their commitment.
All right, so setting a time frame, so that's at least a good starting point. Thanks very much indeed for that. Associate Professor Randolph Tan from the Singapore University of Social Sciences.